What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Adam, back at you again. It is hashtag rebound. It's day 99 since the day I started trying to put my life back together after taking a few days off upon arriving in Houston, Texas. It's also Christmas Eve, and I'm coming at you. I've got the house, an empty house, so I can talk to you all without disturbing anybody, making noise, and I just didn't feel like going to the holiday party today. I was invited. I've been invited to 2 Christmas parties since I've been here, and I just couldn't bring myself to go. One was for work, and it had to do more with the transportation to and from. The other one was more of like the surrogate family, and I'm just not feeling it today. And it's like I'm a little bit, it's Christmas Eve and I'm 2,500 some odd miles away from my kids, who I've barely seen since the day I got arrested. And it's not, Christmas isn't fun for everybody, just put it that way. And I'll be glad when the days of the week are just another day. But for now, some things came to my mind today while I was sitting in front of the computer earlier, kind of going through your comments on the last few videos that I've posted. And I figure, well, it gives me something to talk about with you guys. And, no hard feelings. I'm not looking, no sympathy necessary. I'm just not feeling festive. That's all. I'm not like depressed or anything. It's just not... it's just another day right now. Maybe next year Christmas will be better. I can tell you the last 2 Christmases of my life were absolutely horrible. So it's not that bad. Last year Christmas sucked. The year before that it sucked even worse. That's another story for another video. And hopefully next Christmas will be good. And, I'm just going to go from there. But I don't have high hopes. I really don't. I feel like the rest of my life is, I don't know, sometimes I get into this frame of mind like shit's done. Life is over in terms of like having a nice, enjoyable life and a family and all that kind of stuff. That ship sailed. It's fucking gone. So I don't know what the best I can do at this point is, but you never know what's going to happen. That's the point. And that's the whole point of the video, is that you never know when God's going to show up out of the blue to pick you up and to put you on the right path. You don't know when it's going to happen. And somebody left a comment on a video from a few days ago, the video about anxiety. And it just triggered this memory that I had of a time when that happened. I know I just shared you the story, and I've shared it more than once, and I'll rehash it again for anybody who's new watching the video. But I would suggest going and watching some of the other videos on this channel. I was homeless for 115 days in Jamestown, New York, and for about 100 of those days, it was just, life was going absolutely nowhere. Anytime it felt like things might be moving in the right direction, it was just another slap in the face. I got hired at 2 different jobs only to have the door slammed in my face on the first day of work, because the background check that they said wouldn't be a problem because I was honest with them up front, all of a sudden became a problem. And it was probably a combination of that and doing some Google searches and whatnot. If you're a murderer, but you can go to Google and that person's name really doesn't show up, then you're probably going to be able to slide by when you get out of prison and find a job and get your life back together. But when you're the world's most evil Twitter poster, when you go to Google and you type in my name and you get 700 fucking pages of results and mugshots and everything else, and you were on every single news channel in the entire country of the United States and Canada when this happened, well, good fucking luck. That's all I gotta say. And so, to rehash the story, I had no idea how anything was going to work out, and I was going in and out of feeling hopeless. And here I am at the park recording my daily I'm homeless video, and this guy's dog runs up to me as I'm walking across the little parklet over to this bench where I wanted to sit. Dog jumps on me. I start petting the dog. The dog's owner comes over and starts talking to me, a guy who I'd seen more than once and said hi to more than once. But we start getting into an actual conversation, and at the end of that conversation, I have a time set up and scheduled to go see him at his business the next day. And the next day I show up and we talk some more, and I open up my laptop and I show, some of the things I've done and what I'm intending to do in the future in terms of building a business. And I walked out with a client, and the very next day after that, I get a call from the probation office here in Houston saying, "You're good to go. You can move down here anytime you want." And it happened like that and like that. And you can work as hard as you possibly can, trying to drum up business, trying to find a job, trying to do all the right things that you're supposed to do to make things happen in your life. But off to the side, some random thing happens. You meet a guy at the park, and that turns into the reason why everything starts working out. Not all the hard work that you were putting in trying to do the right thing. I'm not saying don't do the hard work. Don't try and do the right thing. That will, lead to good things if you keep at it. But you don't know where and when things are just going to pop out of nowhere that solve your problems and get you going on the right path. And so, kind of along the same lines of the guy walking his dog, back when I lived in Pittsburgh, long time ago, I was working for a company as their creative director for a small little design studio of about 5 people. And I had done a few projects for PNC Bank while I was working there. Just a few small things here and there over the years. And now it's a few years after I was done working at that company. I had a really bad string of luck with the government, as I've talked about numerous times. If I shared all the stories about how many times the government has come into my life to rip the rug out from under me and completely destroy my life, I'd have to do, a series of 200 videos. That's all these fucking douchebags ever do. I mean, it's the reason I can't mention the word. I can't talk about these people in the government without calling them a bunch of pieces of shit. I can't. So, this particular time, the government made it impossible for me to get a car due to my vehicle. I had a vehicle get stolen, and the government had dished out some bullshit to me prior to that caused a major problem in my life that I wasn't able to work out for over a year. So I had to go almost 2 years without being able to own a car. And the reason why, I'm going to get into this because it's kind of important to the story, even though it's not really on point. I got convicted of driving with a suspended license in the town of Mount Lebanon, which is this uppity, affluent, McMansion kind of suburb neighborhood south of Pittsburgh. You've got Upper St. Clair and Mount Lebanon, all these rich asshole neighborhoods with the fancy names and all that. And these neighborhoods, in most cities, these are where the worst police are also found. And so I got pulled over in Mount Lebanon one day, and the cop comes up to my window and he said that my license was suspended. And I had just moved to Pennsylvania recently, and so I still had a New York State driver's license, and I hadn't switched it yet. But he told me my New York State driver's license came up in his computer as being suspended. That's why he pulled me over. He gave me a ticket. The fine on the ticket was like $600, but I could contest it by coming into court. Okay, so this is Mount Lebanon, PA, suburb of Pittsburgh. So I go to court to fight this because I was able to get proof from New York State. I got some sort of official letter from New York State saying that my driver's license was never suspended. And in fact, they sent me a new card because the cop confiscated my driver's license. So I had my new driver's license in my hand that they sent me through the mail, and a letter saying that my license was never suspended. So I get to the courthouse to fight this ticket. Cops pulled me over right in front of the courthouse, right before you pull into the parking lot. Like, they were waiting for me. There's no doubt about that, and I'll get into that in a minute. They pulled my car apart. They searched my car to the point they were looking for drugs. And they searched my car to the point where they were pulling door panels off the side of the car and, like, leaving a pile of fucking parts in the road. Had, like, 4 cop cars lined up behind me, dogs, all this crazy shit. They ripped my car apart. They kept me in front of the courthouse for, like, 2 hours searching my fucking car. And so I walk into the courthouse after they let me go with they didn't give me a ticket or nothing. They didn't find anything. They didn't have a reason to pull me over. Walked into the courthouse, and the judge was actually in the clerk's office, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Oh, seeing as though you didn't feel like coming in today, we just found you guilty. But if you want to pay us another $50 to file an appeal, we'll take that from you too. How's that sound?" And he was just a complete fucking piece of shit. A complete obnoxious scumbag piece of shit when I walked in there. Now, you got to keep in mind, I was young. I was very young. I was like maybe 21 years old. My daughter was like maybe 2 years old at the time. I don't remember. So anyway, I felt like, well, you can't fight these fucking scumbags. I ended up paying the $600 and just said, fuck it. And nothing happened. My car insurance didn't go up. It just seemed like it was in the past. And so it was like 4 or 5 years later. I mean, it was a period of time after the fact. Another vehicle got stolen from me. And so when it was returned, it had been completely destroyed by the people who stole it, etc., etc. And so I didn't have a vehicle for a few months, and I took it off of my insurance, and I sold the vehicle for scrap. And then I go to buy a new car, and all of a sudden, I couldn't get car insurance. All of the car insurance companies were quoting me $6,000 to $8,000 a year for auto insurance because I had driving while suspended on my driving record all of a sudden. And this had never been a problem before. I'll get into it in a minute as to the reason why. So I went and talked to a lawyer. Lawyer says it's going to cost you $8,000 for us to fix this for you. And I wasn't making squat in terms of money. I couldn't afford this. I couldn't afford to fight this. The lawyer told me, you got scammed. He named all of the police officers, and he named the judge that did it without any prompting from me. He didn't have to look at the ticket. He didn't have to look at anything. He goes, it was officer this, that, and the other. And he said, this was the judge you were supposed to go in front of. They've been running this scam for years. You got caught up in it. Anytime they see someone rolling through there with an out-of-state license plate, they pull this fucking scam on people. And they've been raking in tons and tons of money off of it. And you got caught up in it. It's a scam. He's like, I can file an appeal for you, but because of the amount of time that's gone on and all this, and he's like, it's going to cost about $8,000 for me to get this off your record. And I couldn't afford it. So I ended up not having a car for a couple of years while I tried to figure out what the fuck to do. Because I couldn't afford $6,000 to $8,000 a year for auto insurance all of a sudden. Well, this fucking judge, his name was William J. Iville. I'll never forget this scumbag's name. Fucking piece of shit. He's 6 feet in the ground now. And I hope it's hot where he lives right now. But anyway, he got thrown off the bench. He got kicked off the fucking bench. And he was thrown out for being an alcoholic on the job in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when they were writing articles about this corrupt scumbag getting thrown off the bench for being an alcoholic. They said that he put something like 800 people in jail while he was too drunk to even bang the fucking gavel on his desk. Like, drunk to the point of almost pass out. And So this is what I got caught up into, just another fucking government scam from these corrupt pieces of shit that this government is completely full of, these fucking scumbags. I mean, there's nobody that works for this government that's not a fucking piece of garbage. And this is why I don't want anything to do with any of you fucking people. Because I've just got story upon story upon story. I mean, like I said, I could fill in 200 videos telling you all the fucking crazy stories I've seen from these corrupt scumbags in the government. And then I could start having guests come on this channel to talk about their stories, and I could probably turn this into making a living somehow, because there's no shortage of people who have been completely screwed over by the government. But 15 minutes into this video, and I got a different story to tell. So the judge thrown off the bench and all of that, I got caught up in this scam, and I couldn't get myself a car no matter how hard I tried, because the auto insurance companies wouldn't insure me. And I'm going to tell you, like, right before I got arrested in 2022, I had to get a copy of my driving record, which is clean. But that driving with a suspended license is on my record still to this day. And it's going to be on my driving record for the rest of my life. Driving with a suspended license that had never been suspended in the first place, but now there's no way I can get that removed. So, you know, I got driving with a suspended license that was never suspended, and now I've got 2 years in prison for a fucking Twitter post on top of that. And, you know, I could tell you a million other stories. But I didn't have a car for about a couple of years. And so I was down in downtown Pittsburgh. The public transportation's okay. I lived up near in this bad neighborhood behind what's called Mount Washington in Pittsburgh. And it's a pretty easy way. You know, there was a trolley that went right through my neighborhood. You could walk. I could ride my bicycle. I could walk up to Mount Washington and take what's called the incline. It's a vernacular rail car that basically goes up the side of a big hill. And you can take that up and down. And it's a commuter trick that people just go and the bus company runs it, and you get on this thing and it takes you down the hill, and then you're at what's called Station Square. You walk across a bridge, you're in downtown Pittsburgh. So I did that a lot. And this one day I was doing something in downtown Pittsburgh, and I had taken the bus there, but I decided the quickest way for me to go home is to walk across the bridge, take the incline, and walk home from the incline. And so I'm on my way home, and I don't even remember why I was downtown at this point, but I get on the incline, and I hear someone calling out my name. And sure enough, it was this guy. He was a vice president at PNC Bank, and he was just saying hi to me. He's like, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time." And it was this guy I had done a few projects for in the past when I was working for another company. And we just had a brief conversation on the ride up, and I found out that he lives in the same general neighborhood as, you know, he lives in Mount Washington, and he takes that route quite often to avoid having to drive and find a parking spot. And, you know, I mentioned to him that I was getting ready to start freelancing again, and he just said, "You know, I'll keep you in mind." And we parted ways, and I didn't hear from him or really see him again. And I hadn't really gotten too deep into the freelance business or any of that stuff. So now there's some months that went by between seeing him on the incline and just mentioning that. And now it's some months later, and I'm at this little grocery store in the neighborhood of Mount Washington, and I'm there with my daughter, who I think she was around 7 years old at the time. So we had either walked or taken the bus to go grocery shopping. It was, I don't know, a 2.5 mile walk to where I lived down on the other side of Mount Washington, down in where the bad neighborhood starts and the cheap housing is. I don't remember, but it wasn't a crazy long walk, but it was a little bit of a long walk for a 7-year-old. So I don't know, we took the bus, we walked. I don't know how we got to the grocery store. We did our grocery shopping, and we were just getting ready to sit down at this covered bus stop in front of the store. And I heard my name called. And I turned around, and here's this vice president from PNC Bank. And we started another conversation, and he was also leaving the grocery store and walking home. You know, we talked for a few minutes and we just parted ways. And we went and sat down at the bus stop. He walked to wherever his house was. And we're sitting there for about 5 to 10 minutes waiting for the bus. And all of a sudden a car pulls up in front of the bus stop and the window rolls down and it's the guy from the bank, the VP. And he says, hey, he's like, you guys want to ride home? And so this means he walked home, and this is the kind of guy that he was. I could tell you a lot of stories about this guy. He was a great guy. But he had walked home, decided to grab his car and come back to see if we were still sitting there waiting for the bus. And it was only about a 5-minute, maybe 8-minute drive to my house at the most. Really wasn't that far at all. It wasn't a big deal in terms of time, and you know, he could be back home in, 15 minutes after giving me a ride home. No big deal. But back then it was quick. It would have been quicker for us to walk back to my place than sit and wait for a bus. But I had all these grocery bags and a 7-year-old kid to juggle, and so the bus was just easier. I was just going to wait it out. And I'd been used to riding the bus quite a bit during this period where I couldn't get a car. And so on the way back to my house, he said, man, I'm glad I ran into you today because I have this project that I need someone to do and I can't really find anybody who can do it. And he kind of explains it to me. And I said, yeah, I can help you with that. And we talked a little bit more and I quoted him a pretty high hourly rate because, knowing that he works for the biggest bank in the city, I went for it. And he didn't bat an eye at me, and he just said, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And all that means is that I could have gone higher, but even so, I was still pretty happy, especially when this project turned into reality and I started making enough money from the work that I was doing for them where I eventually quit my full-time job and I started working on my own. And like I said, you never know when these things are going to come out of nowhere, and they're probably going to show up in ways that you never expected. And there's so many stories I can share. This one just popped into my head today. And so around the same time, I also had a free car, more or less just fall into my lap right around the same time. I've talked about this on another video or two. I was going to church. They had a ministry at the church where they give cars to needy people. And I didn't consider myself to be that needy. I mean, I did go a long period of time without having a job. And then, I was having all these problems. And anyway, somebody at the church who was a friend of mine knew about the car trouble and knew what I was going through with the Department of Transportation and the insurance companies and all that. And so this person got me in touch with someone at the church who ran the car ministry, and it was run out of one of the pastors owned an auto garage. And so he had like 5 or 6 cars that were donated to the church, and they were looking for people to give them to. And when he asked me, he says, do you happen to drive a stick shift? And I said, that's usually all I drive. He's like, perfect. He's like, you'll be doing us a favor, because I've got 3 cars sitting on the lot that I can't give away because nobody knows how to drive a stick shift. He's like, so pick one of these 3 and you can come get it tomorrow. And because it was a 1984 Toyota Tercel that had a top speed of like 50 miles an hour, and it was just the most bare bones basic car I've ever driven in my life, the insurance companies gave me it was a ridiculous rate, but it was something I could actually afford for 6 months or so. And the thing is, I would have to pay this for 6 months, but then after the 6 months was over, I would be able to get insurance at a normal rate that a normal driver would get with a normal driving record. And the whole racket with these insurance companies, and the reason why they were getting away with trying to charge me $6,000 to $8,000 a year was because when that car that I owned that got stolen, when I got rid of that car and took it off my insurance policy, I waited about 3 to 4 months to go look for another car. And it was a tough 3 to 4 months, but I needed money was tight. That's all. That's the bottom line. Having my car get stolen was like having the rug ripped out from under me bad enough. I had to pay for this. I had to pay a fee to pick up the car from the impound, and it had been pretty much destroyed. Not the first time that's happened, but the government sucks. I'm not going to go down that road and waste another hour talking about that. But I had a lapse of insurance that was like 4 months long, and when I started looking for a new vehicle, every single insurance company, either they wouldn't cover me at all, or they would cover me if I paid $6,000 to $8,000 a year. That's over $500 a month for car insurance. $500 a month. Some of the vehicles that I was looking at that I could take out a loan for, the insurance was twice as much as the monthly payment for the car. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to essentially pay $1,000 a month between the loan and insurance and gas and maintenance and everything else that go. I couldn't afford it. And no matter what I did, I could not get this problem fixed. Well, when this church, when they gave me this car, they gave me an insurance rate for 6 months that was ridiculous. And I ended up having to pay most of it. I think I paid the whole 6 months up front. So I made one big insurance payment, and I didn't need to make a payment to them for 6 months. After that 6 months was up, I started looking for car insurance again, and all of a sudden, all of the car insurance rates were what you would expect for a normal driver with a clean driving record to be paying. And there's some bullshit, I don't know how it is in other states, but there's some rule in Pennsylvania that if you have a lapse in insurance coverage where you may not have owned a car for 3 months or whatever, they can basically treat you a lot differently than they can if you've had continuous insurance coverage for a period of time. You can get a DUI, but as long as you had continuous insurance coverage for years and years, the amount your insurance rate might go up is a little bit. But if you sell that car, if you get rid of that car, if you don't have a car for a few months, and then you try and go and get car insurance, forget about it. You're paying $8,000 a year for your car insurance. If they'll even give you insurance at all because of that gap. It has nothing to do with what your driving record actually is. It's the fact that you had this gap of more than 3 months, and they can just turn around and you bend over and they stick it right up there. And you got nothing, there's nothing you can do but take it and, say, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" That's pretty much your only option at that point. So, but the point of the story that I'm sharing is that all of this stuff came out of nowhere. I was suffering. I was going through a bad time. I was having a hard time finding some work. I didn't have a car. I was suffering. There were times where I would have to get my daughter to school, get me to work, pick up my daughter after work, and get home. I'd have to leave at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buses, sometimes 8 different buses, and transfer all these different buses and trains, and wouldn't be getting home with my 7-year-old daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, my 6-year-old daughter until like 8 o'clock at night. Leaving at 5:30 in the morning the next day to do it all over again and come back at 8 o'clock at night, even though I was working a 9 to 5 job. So 5:30 a.m. to 9, I'm taking buses and trying to get my kid around, especially in the middle of winter when it's 5 degrees outside. And then after I'm done work at 5, it's another 3 hours of hassle and going through this whole thing again just to get home at 8 o'clock. Then I got to cook dinner. Then I got to do all this other stuff. Then I got to put my kid to bed, get like 3 hours of sleep, and do it again. So this is what my life was like for like 2 years because of these government scumbags. And so, once again, the point of the story, aside from the fact that people that work for the government are scum of the earth, are that you never know that when you're going through a period of suffering, God just might show up out of the blue in the most random way to pick you up and set you on the right path. And for me, it was that day at the grocery store when that guy pulled up in his car, opened up his door and said, "Hey, you want to ride home?" And a couple of weeks later, I'm doing freelance work for this guy, making a decent amount of money. And a couple months after that, I'm able to quit the job where I'm at, and all of a sudden a free car just falls into my lap. I wasn't even looking for it. Somebody who knew my story and knew what I was going through came at me and said, hey, I know where I can get you a car. And it fell into my lap. I didn't even know the church was giving away cars to people. And if I did know, I wouldn't have even asked, because I would have been like, who am I? There's like probably needier people than me, but when it all came down to it. And the funny thing is, one of my best friends at the time, I drove that car around for a couple of years. It's a Toyota. I never had a problem with it. It needed new tires once. When I got done driving that car, I gave it to my best friend. He was going through a time, and he was going through a problem, and he actually had some government-sponsored issues with his driving. He was trying to get a new car. He bought a pickup truck, and the pickup truck went bad, and he had to get rid of it, and he couldn't get another car, and there was like some government nonsense. It was almost like not the same situation I was going through, but something got in his way that wasn't his fault. It was just some scumbag dirt piece of garbage from the government getting in his way and keeping him from being able to do what he needed to do and get back on his feet. And so I went and got myself another car, and I gave him that car that the church gave me. And he drove that car for, I think it was about a year. He drove that car. And then he traded that car in for something better after about a year. And that car was pretty much on its last legs around that point, or it may have had a head gasket leaking or something. But I mean, I don't know. All I know is that for 3 years, God's car, that's what we called it, God's car was getting us all over the place and getting us around town and solved so many problems. Now I don't have to spend 6 hours out of my day taking 6 to 7 different buses and trains to get to and from work and taking my kid to school and stuff. And so, now I can get around. Now I'm getting home at 6 o'clock after I'm done with work. Now we don't have to go. Now she goes to school at 7:30 or whatever. I could leave at 7 o'clock in the morning to take her to school. And then I'd have plenty of time to get to work, because I didn't work until 9. And all I had to do, I could drive across the bridge, find a place to park, and go to work and like grab breakfast and just have a nice relaxing morning all of a sudden. So all these things just came out of nowhere, just fell out of the sky. The freelance client that got me started on my freelance business, and this car that just magically appeared. And so, like I said, this whole thing, this whole story, these memories, some of them bitter, angry memories about that drunk-ass judge that screwed me over for a long time. Someone left a comment today on my anxiety video from the other day, and it just made me remember that more than I had already been thinking about it. But ironically, I had shared a story about that same car with my friend that I live with here today. We were talking about tires, and I had to buy tires for that car once, and that's a whole nother story. But I was actually talking about that car today, and talking about how I gave it to our other friend, and how, I drove it to Washington, D.C. once, and in the mountains I couldn't go faster than 50 miles an hour uphill and some other things like that. But it was fine. It was a cool car, especially for a free car. And this client, he was very demanding at times, but it was my biggest client for my freelance business. By leaps and bounds, they accounted for about 80% of my annual income during the 6 or so years that I was freelancing. And there were these 2 big annual projects that I would do for them. And I talked about this in the other videos recently, where sometimes I would have to spend 100 hours a week or more. 100 hours a week, sometimes staying up without sleep 2-3 days in a row, or maybe getting an hour or 2 of sleep here and there. Maybe I stay up all night, meet with the client when they get to work in the morning, go sneak away, take a nap for a couple hours, do it again. Like crazy amounts of work and hours to get some of these things done in time and to meet their expectations. But I was making a ton of money from that, because I was billing the client for every hour I worked. So 100 hours in a week, I was getting some serious loot. And the motivation is a lot different. If you're working for yourself and you're getting paid by the hour for that work, it's a much different situation than doing the same thing, working 100 hours a week for some company where you're just paid a salary and the company expects you to work that 100-hour a week for their clients. There was one agency I worked at. I worked there for about 5 months. It started out really great, and then at some point, I ended up having to find a new job and walk. And there was a mass exodus going on at this place. There were some serious problems, but the short version of the story is the company was billing out my time along with everybody else's time. It's an ad agency. They have clients. The clients are paying the ad agency per hour on this work that we're doing. And every hour that we work, the company is turning around and billing this client for those hours. And so it's probably somewhere around $200 an hour for my work for this client, regardless of how many hours I worked. But I was making about $65,000 a year salary at the time, which means no matter how many hours I work, I'm not getting paid for overtime. So that's $1,250 a week gross take home or gross pay on your paycheck, and that's before taxes. When you divide that by 100 hours in a week, you're making $12.50 an hour. That's the same hourly rate when you add in tips that I make working at the minimum pay bakery that I'm working at right now part-time. And this agency is making a fortune. And they're not the only ones. I mean, this is common in this line of work. The agency's making a fortune by taking advantage of these salaried workers. And, you know, like I said, I've seen it all the time at various companies, especially at agencies and studios who bill your hours directly to their clients. And then they pocket all that money and they give you $12 an hour for your time. So if you work 100 hours in a week and the agency bills you out at $200 an hour and you're taking home $12 an hour for that work, the agency's making $188 per hour that week, or $18,800 for that week. That's what they're billing. That's what they're collecting for your work. And they're giving you, $1,250 of the $18,800. And then you got to pay half of that to the fucking government in taxes so that some drunk ass fucking judge can take your driver's license away from you and charge you even more money. So that's it's bad enough that they're taking it, but that's what you're paying for when the government takes it from you, or they're just sending it off to Ukraine now. So imagine a 6-person team working on a project like that, where they're just grinding everybody and making people work about 100 hours a week to the point where you're there until like 2 a.m. You're going home, getting home at like 3 a.m, sleeping for like 2 hours, getting back up, going back in by like 7 or 8 a.m, day after day after day after day. Saturday, Sunday, that's what they're demanding now because they're behind on all their deadlines. They overpromised stuff to this client, and now they're putting it on the workers to make up for their dumbass mistakes at the top and they don't want to, even though they're raking in all this fucking money, they're not going to hire enough people to come in and do the work and pick up the slack and actually, they're just going to grind everybody that they have sitting there in the chairs until they're completely burned out. And so imagine a 6-person team billing out at $200 an hour per person to their client. That's $120,000 per week that the company's making from that team, billing out to their clients. But the employees combined are making $7,500. So the company's keeping $112,000, $500 for that week. And the 6 people get to split the $7,500 that's left. So, but I get it. Ask the owner of any advertising agency, and Maseratis and top shelf whiskey and strippers and hookers and blow. That shit's not cheap. Aside from the overhead of running a big ad agency in a fancy building in downtown Pittsburgh, it's not cheap. But when you're bringing in $112,500 a week from your clients, and you're dishing out the people that did all the work for the clients, you know, $7,500. They're each getting $1,200, you know, and that's before the government takes half their money in taxes. Well, there's a reason why half of the people that worked at this company all walked off the job in a span of about 3 months. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I even told you guys in another video a while back about another company that I had a job interview with in downtown Pittsburgh, and they had this freaking amazing multi-million-dollar office with a rotating conference room with a 360-degree whiteboard, and you know, but it was for lazy presenters because you could draw on the whiteboard and then they'd push a joystick and the whole room would rotate, and then they would draw on the next part of the whiteboard, and throughout the entire day they could do like a whole 360, like it's like a rotating restaurant that you see at the top of a tower in Las Vegas or something like that, except it's a rotating conference room in this building. So they're spending the money on all of that. But they had like this row of rooms, and they were like these little jail cells furnished by IKEA. And it was for the employees to sleep at night when they're forced to sit there all night working for $12 an hour. So I didn't get that job because I called them out on their fucking bullshit and made a joke about it, and they walked me straight to the fucking door and said, "Good day." And I was fine with that because I already knew what that meant. And I'm like, I'm not signing up for this shit. I'd rather be eating ramen noodles unemployed than go through that shit again. So yeah. But once again, circling back around, I'm going off tangent, getting a little irritated, and you can see you get treated like dirt in life enough times, you're not gonna walk away from it with a sunshine and rainbows attitude. You're just not. But the point of the day here, the point of this video, before I just keep going off track with all these different stories, is that I just had another example of how God, he just shows up in the most random times, in the most random situations. You can never predict how it's going to work out like that. A dog comes up to you in the park and shoves his snout into your crotch and wants you to pet him, and all of a sudden you're started off on your way having a brand new business because of it, and clients and everything else. Or you're waiting for a bus at the grocery store with a bunch of bags, and a guy just pulls up in a car and says, "Hey, you need a ride?" And it's a guy that you actually know, so it's not like it's not like the free candy van just showed up and asked you if you wanted to come in and have some candy, but it's an actual legit ride home. You just never know when God's just going to show up and say, "All right, you've been through enough. Watch what I can do." Boom. And it just shows up out of nowhere. So you got to be ready for it. It's like, I expect it to happen, but I'm not like in a bitter way. I'm not sitting here going, "God, you got to make this all work out. I'm waiting for you. Come on, what the hell are you going to do?" No, I just know in the back of my mind right now that I've got a bunch of stuff I've got to get done. I've got to find a place to live. I got to find a vehicle. I got to get back on my feet. I've got to be able to get back into my children's lives. I got to be able to do some things. I got to get on my track. I got to do everything I can to get probation off my back and to try and get early release. I mean, if Joe Biden is going to set free a bunch of rapists and murderers, you know, can the guy who posted mean tweets on Twitter cut a fucking break? I don't fucking know. I don't believe that that's in the cards, but you know, I don't know. Maybe I'll reach out to some people and see what I can do, but I really don't think that the little guy, and that means not just me, but all of you watching, they don't give a fuck about us. They don't give a fuck about us. So that's where I'm at. No, I don't think I'm going to get a reprieve or any kind of clemency or commutation or pardon or whatever the case may be from a bunch of corrupt fucking scumbags. I'm not. I don't have enough money to bribe the Biden family to get my pardon right now. I don't know, you know, what else can I do? I don't have that have that money in the bank. So, but I'm sitting here, I get worried. This whole driver's license thing, I gotta wait now until like January 3rd for my next crack at getting a Texas driver's license. And even if everything goes smooth at the DMV, I might have to wait 2 more weeks to get the actual photo ID card in the mail. I went to the bank today to deposit a check and to make a withdrawal. And they asked me for my ID, and I handed them my New York State driver's license. And they sat there just looking at it. And like this is the second time in a week that I've had problems. I went to the post office to do some stuff. They needed my ID. And it's just like this big hassle, like, why don't you have a Texas driver's license? Are you from New York? Are you, like, it just a million questions, and it becomes a hassle. And I look at the clerk at the bank today, and I said, this is the same driver's license that I used when I signed up for an account at this bank. So you want to go talk to one of the managers, or, are we going to have a problem here? Hey, do you need my birth certificate? I happen to have my birth certificate right here in my folder, my social security card, and some other stuff if you need me to prove who I am. I got about 6 different bills and envelopes and other things postmarked with my address on it here in Texas. Like, how much proof do you need? I have it all in there because I need to take it to the DMV. But I was ready to break it all out at the bank if necessary and say, look, this is who I am. Do we have a problem? But we had some small talk, we had some laughs, and then she ended up giving me my money and put the check in my account, and we're all good. Don't got to worry about it. I just figured if she's going to give me a hassle because she doesn't want to take my driver's license, I'm just going to go outside and take my money out of the bank at the ATM. Like, done. Problem solved. But I just happened to be in the bank to deposit a check because it's just quicker to do it at the teller. And the bank was open today. But twice in the last week, I've had to deal with a hassle for not having my Texas driver's license. And even when I go to the DMV and they give me that printout card that serves as your temporary license, none of these places are going to take that as a valid ID. It's not the cop that pulls me over when I'm driving that's valid for, and the cops will accept that. But when you need to have an ID to do something at a bank, at a store, I got a hassle. I tried to rent a car one day here in Houston. Now, Enterprise Rent-A-Car had no problem renting me a van to drive all the way from Buffalo, New York to Houston, Texas. But I went to rent a car for one day here in Houston, and they wouldn't rent me the car because I have a New York State driver's license instead of a Texas driver's license. So tell me, once again, if I had my Texas driver's license that day instead of New York driver's license, I wouldn't have had any problems. I would not have gone through the hassle that I went through that day to do what I needed to do. And so this driver's license shit is insane. It's a major hassle that I've been dealing with now for over a month, trying to get this straightened out. And that's just one small part of a whole bunch of other things that I have to get done within the next month or so. And so the fact that I've got to wait probably another 3 or more weeks before I have an actual Texas photo ID card in the mail. And that's only if things go smooth at the DMV and on round 2. So I'm trying not to sit here and expect the worst and to, have all these negative thoughts. But, I mean, you're talking to a guy who got, I had to go 2 years without a car because some fucking piece of shit, fat, scumbag, drunk judge in Pittsburgh who got thrown off the bench for being an alcoholic scammed me out of $600 back in the day and put driving with a suspended license on my driving record, even though I never had a suspended license. So fuck these fucking scumbags. That's all I gotta say. Fuck the government. Fuck everybody that works for these fucking scumbags. They're scum of the earth. There's no good people in our fucking government. There's not. So, but these are the hassles and the problems that are getting in my way that are making it a lot more difficult to do I already have difficult things that I have to accomplish in the next month or so. The government is making everything 10 times harder because they won't give me a fucking piece of paper. They won't give me a document that says I'm a valid human being. And so, and it's multiplying my stress because, you know, I just need to figure this stuff out. And the more these people want to get in my way and put their boot on my neck, the angrier I'm getting about it. But at the end of the day, there's nothing any of us can do because, you know, we're all just a bunch of fucking slaves to a system that owned this country long before the Constitution was ever written, and that fucking thing doesn't exist at all anymore. That's done. That, I don't know if it ever existed in the first place. But, you know, anybody who thinks they have rights, like, go out and try to exercise those rights and see how far you get. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, I'm going off the rails. It's like 50 minutes, and I've probably spent 10 minutes bitching about the government too much. And here it's Christmas Eve. I hope you got some good things going on in your world. And no, I'm not as angry as I sound right now. I'm really not. I'm going to get off the video here. I'm going to upload it, go watch some shows on TV. I'm going to make something to eat. I'm going to chillax. I'm going to have a good evening. Just relax, recuperate, de-stress a little bit. I'm going to go through the Christmas thing tomorrow. I don't know. I really don't expect to get much done. And then Thursday this week, I'm going to pick myself back up and start pounding the pavement again, getting work done, getting client work done, trying to advance, like going to that to-do list and see if I can get one of these government dirtbags to get off their ass and fill out the right piece of paper so I can get to the next level. Whatever the case may be, I'm just going to get up and do it. I'm not going to let these people stop me, but they can get in my way and make things take 10 times longer than they should. So with that, I'm just going to say, hope y'all have a Merry Christmas. If you're a Democrat, I hope you don't have a happy holidays. In fact, I'll wish you Democrats a Merry Christmas because I know you hate it. So Merry Christmas to all, and to all, peace out.